on day 29, week 7 of the United States versus Sean Combs, and what a day. I'm going to go out of order a little bit because we were in court today from 8:45 a.m. was when we first kicked things off, and we basically didn't get out until 3:45 with two very short 15-minute breaks for press and for the attorneys. So with that being said, both the government and the defense rested their cases today. The defense, I mean, as you know, the government had a 6-week case. Well, the defense put on a 30-minute case. I will get there. And I also wanted to point out that right before the defense presented their case, Diddy was questioned by the judge on whether or not he was going to testify. And of course, he did not testify. And that exchange was kind of funny. The judge said, how are you, Mr. Combs? And he said, I'm great, Your Honor. And then right as Judge Subramanian was about to say something else, Diddy said, and, I think you're doing an excellent job, Judge. And he's like, thank you. And then, he went on to question him, just confirming that it was his decision alone, that he would not be testifying in his own trial. And, did you discuss this with your attorneys at length, et cetera, et cetera? And Diddy confirmed, yes, it's my decision alone that I won't be testifying. And yes, I thoroughly discussed this with my attorneys. And right before that was when Alexandra Shapiro argued Rule 29, where she actually argued that all 5 charges should be dismissed for various reasons. And I can go over those reasons as well, and I will. But let's go back to the beginning of the morning at 8:45. Because there was a sufficient evidentiary discussion based on the defense's evidence that they were submitting for their case in chief. And the government had 9 objections. 3 were fully sustained. And for 2 of these objections, they came to a partial agreement where some of it could be admitted and some of it couldn't, or it had to be redacted. And then the remainder was admitted as is. So, and again, these are just text messages between Cassie and Diddy. But what I'll tell you right now is the text messages that were not admitted. The ones that were not admitted, there was a message about Cassie saying that she wanted to do it with Diddy in his office, and this was not admitted because the judge agreed with the government that this was not. This did not have anything to do with the alleged trafficking, even though the defense said, well, it's around the same time period. And they were like, no, this doesn't really matter. And then there was another sustained objection about when Diddy wanted Cassie to go to couples counseling, and she said no. The defense said, this undermines the government's theory of coercion because Cassie's refusing to engage in this couples therapy. And the government again just said, this is hearsay. Cassie never talked about this on the stand, whatever. I didn't quite understand the defense's argument about it going to the effect of, or the theory of coercion because she's refusing to go, but it doesn't matter because the judge sided with the government. That was not admitted. And what was the last one? Oh, there was something about a thread about Cassie decorating a hotel room for Diddy on Valentine's Day. And this was partially admitted. Some of the photos, the defense was trying to show that she did this on her own accord. Nobody asked her to. And the government, again, argued hearsay because Cassie never discussed this. They couldn't really match up. They couldn't match things up with her testimony and certain things on the chart, although this was mentioned on the chart. So they are going to allow some of the pictures in. I guess she took some pictures of a hotel room, but not some of the actual text messages. Okay, so again, I'm going to just go a little bit out of order, but basically Tenny Garagos, she had indicated yesterday that her cross-examination would most likely last about 90 minutes. Well, it ended up lasting a lot longer than 90 minutes. I believe it lasted close to over 3 hours. It was pretty intense and long, and she was really trying to get in those text messages from Jane, those really explicit text messages, really trying to show that Jane was a willing participant. I'll get into some of those after. But when she was finished and it was time for redirect, Maureen Comey was not messing around. Normally, Maureen Comey, her demeanor is just very contained, I guess. She got up there a little bit louder than normal, I would say, slightly more aggressive. Again, I think she was done. She had it with this long, drawn out cross examination, and she really wanted to have this mic drop moment, perhaps, to end the government's case because this was their last witness and they rested after this. So she gets up there and she says, Special Agent Cerciello, we just looked at financial records for Sean Combs. Did they reflect that Sean Combs paid to transport Cabral Williams across state lines for objection? And then Maureen Comey reworded that in a similarly yet slightly less aggressive manner, which caused another objection and then a sidebar. After the sidebar, things cooled off a little bit, but I was like, wow, I had never seen Maureen Comey like that in the courtroom. And I guess if I'm going to offer some kind of opinion, my opinion would be that she knew what she was saying probably wouldn't fly on the record, but she really needed to get that across so the jury would hear it and they would sense the urgency in her tone and maybe the verbiage that she used, which kind of matched up to the indictment and the charges. So just going back really quickly to Tenny Garagos's cross, the poor jury saw 7 more explicit video clips. One of the clips we could kind of hear, and they had to just fix the volume on all the headphones and kind of take a pause for a minute. And the jury still is not reacting to this. They really had very little reactions to these videos. And, I also saw a headline yesterday that said that Diddy was dancing to the freak off videos that the jury was watching. I have a pretty good view of him. I didn't see any dancing. Sometimes these headlines, they make me laugh a little bit, or I'm wondering, I'm like, were we in the same courtroom? I really don't know. And of course I understand you could miss certain things, but yeah. So again, Tenny Garagos made sure that we really heard every explicit text message from Jane, seemingly being a willing participant in all of these hotel nights. And I mean, even just simple texts of Diddy saying, hey, meet me and Paul at 9:30 at XYZ location. And then we'd see or read Jane's text message that said, okay, babe, can't wait, like with an emoji kind of saying, look, she's not upset. She's not dreading this. And we also saw a lot of Jane's text messages one-on-one, specifically with Cabral, let's say. He's the one that Jane, I don't mean to say let's say, but he's the one that Jane really texted the most. And I think they were showing us their exchanges because Jane appeared to be at ease. She would text him things about what he did to her and it things like, oh, I can't wait to see you type of thing that maybe she wouldn't necessarily say if, she was being coerced. And again, I am surmising this as the defense as to why they showed the jury this. They also made sure to show the jury where Diddy had said that he witnessed Jane climax from one of the entertainers numerous times. And I think that goes directly to Jane saying that she never climaxed from an entertainer. Putting it out there, I'm not saying any, I believe that message or I believe she did or she didn't. I'm just putting it out there. What else? Yeah, Jane saying that she is ready for him and she'll do whatever he wants. Let me see what else. I mean, it went on for a while. Oh, photos that she sent him of heels and outfits and 2 pairs of boxer briefs, which we heard Jane testify about, that she didn't like what the entertainers showed up in. So she would get the entertainer and Diddy matching boxers. What else? There was also times where Tenny would say, well, you indicated that Vegas was a city in the chart when we're discussing, Paul, Jane, and text, with Mr. Combs, and there's no proof here or nothing to show that Paul traveled to Vegas. And then he would say, no, it was just Jane and it was just Mr. Combs. So there was a few, I think there's 2 instances, yes, of that. Oh, there was one thing that I kind of thought was just funny. Diddy texted Paul. I guess he was engaged in some kind of activity with Jane, and he texted Paul and he said 911 freak emergency, like he needed him there. Another text from Jane saying, I don't regret anything. It all feels right. And then there was something that she said to him that she was joking. She was like, I know that you're ready to lock me in a hotel room, because I know you, and put a laughing emoji there. And then they played a video. We didn't see it, of course. It was June 22nd, 2024, which is 4 days after the beating and the fight between Jane and Diddy at her LA home. And this video, again, 4 days after, it's I guess it was a video of Jane being like, here's my bestie, referring to Diddy. Yeah, and that is the extent, I would say, of the cross. I'm really condensing it because, like I said, it went on for 3 hours plus. And then we had the redirect, which was a bit aggressive. And again, that really woke us all up, because I think a lot of people have been, just hitting that wall. You're really not supposed to react too much in court as press. And when I heard the 911 freak emergency, I was just like, oh my God. Okay, so then we had Alexander Shapiro argue about the 5 charges being dropped. That's 2 counts of sex trafficking, 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution, and RICO. And she really broke down all of the RICO predicates here. So she broke down the obstruction, the bribery, and she just went into why there was insufficient evidence to this, the workforce, or the forced labor, and then of course the sex trafficking and the transportation and the Mann Act, basically. So she had said that there's insufficient evidence for RICO as a whole, because there's no evidence to support that Diddy conspired with anyone. And their examples here are basically this quote unquote enterprise. They're saying it dated back to 2004, this criminal enterprise. And they're alleging that KK is a co-conspirator. Well, they didn't introduce KK into their evidence until the year 2016. So they're like, where was KK, for all of these additional years? And they also argued that all of the employees, including KK, nobody was setting things up with these quote unquote entertainers. That was just Diddy and Jane. And that the employees, they didn't have any thoughts or ideas that what was going on in the hotel rooms were illegal. They said, no, we and they would cite, Alexander would cite the transcripts where the certain assistants would say that they just thought that he was having personal time with his significant other. Stated a time where Jonathan Perez said, it's not my business. Where David James said he saw a man in the hotel room with Cassie and Diddy when he dropped something off, but he's like, I didn't press further because that was their personal life. So they also discussed that, the only evidence that I guess would be criminal was the testimony about the assistants getting drugs for him. And then she said, but it was just such a small amount that, there was just it was just basically thin proof that they conspired, in terms of this crazy criminal enterprise. So let me see. Again, and they just said, the enterprise isn't distinct. It's like, there's just not this group of people. Oh, and they also cited that the security guards, for example, like D-Rock, if he was this co-conspirator here, when Diddy would be violent with Cassie, and Alexandra Shapiro said regrettably violent, D-Rock would swoop in and help Cassie and protect her. Or, Cassie said she was close with D-Rock and his wife. And Shapiro argued that if he was a co-conspirator, he wouldn't be helping Cassie. He would be adding to the violence with Diddy. And then, okay, so then with the sex trafficking, Alexandra Shapiro argued that Diddy did not have the guilty mind or the mens rea to commit these acts because he was getting text messages from his significant other that they wanted to be there, the explicit messages, and that, he didn't have any indication that they weren't willing participants based on their behavior. And he also argued that Jane had that Jane had this financial motive here with her wanting gifts, or she enjoyed the gifts and she liked getting her apartment paid for and cash deposited in her account. And let me see. Making sure I'm not missing too much on the sex trafficking. Oh, and then she talked about how the regrettable violence that Cassie endured, it wasn't to force her into this alleged sex trafficking. This would happen after, and this was domestic violence, which is not a part of RICO. And she even cited the Intercontinental Hotel video saying, it's unfortunate what happened, but this was after an FO. He wasn't beating her in order to join the FO. And then let me just go into the forced labor. She said that evidence is insufficient because there haven't been force or threats of serious harm. And usually with forced labor, she kind of compared it to also like immigration. Like you're overworking these immigrants, promising them for a green card. And that's just not what happened here in terms of like Mia and Capricorn Clark. She said that their biggest fear was actually losing their job. And both of them testified that they didn't want to lose their job. And again, that was their biggest fear. They could have left, and both of them had jobs after. He didn't blacklist them, etc. And then she brought up the kidnapping was insufficient, and that goes back to Capricorn Clark. She kind of just said it didn't meet the New York requirement for kidnapping. She wasn't restrained, and they haven't shown any evidence that Diddy knew what was happening, except for the fact that he didn't have his jewelry. He didn't know she was going there 5 days in a row. She went there willingly. And then she brought up Cassie at the London hotel, where she was forced to stay there to heal from some of these injuries she got. She said that did not meet, or that was not sufficient enough for the kidnapping law in California, because she wasn't held under force. She testified, and again, she cited this testimony that Cassie was brought to the hotel, her own words, by security, and noted that Cassie said she'd rather have stayed at his house. And Shapiro said, well, why is that if she was so scared? And then let me see. Oh, she brought up obstruction and bribery with the RICO, saying that this did not meet the burden because the obstruction would mean that there were threats to hinder law enforcement. And this was never the case. Nobody was going to law enforcement. And this also goes with the bribery as well. She stated that bribery is offering a promise to someone before they're about to turn something over to law enforcement, some kind of material. And again, she pointed out that this video in particular that they were trying to get was to avoid negative publicity and reputational harm. There was no police involvement and no police involvement here, because also Cassie had said she didn't want it either. And then she brought up Eddie Garcia's testimony and the FaceTime that he brought up, with Cassie, where Cassie said that she didn't want it to get out because she had a movie premiere, et cetera, et cetera. So, and that, that was pretty much the extent of her argument. I tried to write as fast as I could. What else? Oh, okay. So she brought up the arson, saying there's no evidence or witnesses that can put him there for the arson, and then brought up that there was female DNA. So that was not sufficient, I guess. Let me see. Oh, and then she also claimed that Jane wasn't a separate count of sex trafficking initially. She only became a separate count when the government learned of the June 2024 assault that took place. And again, they are arguing that these regrettable domestic assaults had nothing to do with him forcing Jane or Cassie, because they would happen after. However, this fight, this one in particular from June 18th, 2024, this did happen after I'm sorry, the fight happened before the alleged FO or debauchery nights that Jane and Diddy called them. So, okay, then that's when Diddy said he wasn't going to testify. And then the defense presented their literal 30-minute case in chief, which is just wild. So they had Anna Estevao read through some text messages and Tenny Garagos read through some stipulations. And essentially, Kathy wrote to Daniel Phillip one of the I wanted to go back. Sorry. Alexandra Shapiro, she argued about the violation of the Mann Act with the transportation, that this is not a thing because the only two people that testified on the stand, Daniel Phillip and the Punisher, were not actual prostitutes. They each had other jobs. Punisher was a stripper. Daniel Phillip was, he managed a male review show. And, that they were just paid for their time and for their companionship type of thing. And also that was that. Okay. So then back to the defense's case. So they showed us text messages where Cassie wrote to Daniel Phillip that he was her best friend. And then they cited some testimony where Daniel Phillip said that he was jealous when Diddy was with Cassie. And then they brought up the fact that, when Don Richard met with law enforcement, it did not come up that Diddy had said people go missing or people disappear if they tell certain things. And then they also stated that the Punisher stated on the stand that he had feelings for Cassie. And, they brought up Capricorn Clark. The first 11 of her 13 interviews with law enforcement, she never mentioned a call that she made in the car outside of Kid Cudi's house, which was a huge part of her testimony. This call, if you remember, it was a whole thing where she called Cassie and Kid Cudi, but she had Lauren London on the line. That seemed to change a lot. So they brought that up. And then, they brought up Mia and how a handful of Mia's interviews, like the first, I don't know the exact number, but let's say that she had 5 interviews. The first 3, she did not mention that Diddy initiated or allegedly raped her. And then, of course, they brought up Brianna Bongalin's testimony, which, they had kind of impeached her on at least the date of the balcony dangling incident, and also that she never said in any of her initial interviews that Diddy said, I could kill you at this photo shoot at his house with Cassie and this other guy. And let me see. That was, pretty much the extent of it. The Cassie text. There's numerous messages from Cassie. And again, really nothing with Jane, because I think they spent so much time on the Jane text this morning that they didn't have to. But with the Cassie stuff, it was like her telling him, like, Pop, I owe you a good night because I know you'll find someone. I owe you a good night if you want me to call someone. I promise I'll be better. If I'm not, you can leave me. And let me see. Cassie said, thank you I love you. Thank you for always trying with me. I will be a woman, not a child. I'll be better. Teamwork makes the dream work, kind of hinting they were in that together. So, yes. And then we saw, do you think you can FO without getting high? This message from Diddy to Cassie. And then Cassie says yes with a smiley face. And again, this goes to the government alleging that Diddy would force them to take drugs to do this. So Cassie says yes. And then she writes back, send me a D pic. And then, that's pretty much it. I mean, I felt like the defense thought they were in pretty good shape, pretty confident that they got everything they needed out in front of the jury. So what's going to happen is there's going to be jury charges tomorrow. The jury will not be there. They will go through, each side will go through the verdict slip, and then the closings begin on Thursday and will go through Friday, and then the jury will start to deliberate by Monday. So yeah, there won't be an update video tomorrow, I don't think. I mean, let's wait and see, but you will get one Thursday. So all right, thanks for watching. That was a doozy.